tell us a bit about yourself.
That's always a very interesting question. I feel like I'm on a first date now. It's been a while since I had one of those. Yeah, I've been involved in cricket and cricket journalism for about 10 years. I've read a couple of books. I work for a cricket tournament based in the Caribbean, so I get to go to the Caribbean a lot, which is nice. Be there again in August and September this year. Yeah, I'm obsessed with poker. And spend a lot of time thinking about it and trying to work out how I can stop being so bad. And I think that's kind of what it kind of comes from, kind of my interest in poker is more, it's not so much seeing someone like, I don't know, Jason Kuhn or Daniel Negreanu or Tom Dwan being amazing. It's more us guys who go along on a certain night and play at the casino and try and not lose all of our money. I had a night, the last time I went to the casino, I went out on level 7 of the tournament and I didn't win a single hand all night. I just folded my way to destruction. Yeah, it's a fun game, but I think it messes with your head almost more than anything else if you start thinking about it too much.
Yeah, indeed. So when and why did you actually start to play poker?
I think I kind of remember being interested in card games as a kid. I think first game I ever remember playing as kind of like a teenager at school was, I think we played 5-card draw, but at the time I don't think I knew it was 5-card draw. And then obviously the poker boom kind of happened and people started talking about it more. And then, there was more ways for you to have a go at playing online and, you'd find friends that wanted to play with you. Do you remember that when Facebook poker first happened and everyone was like,
Zynga poker.
Yeah, Zynga poker, but you play on Facebook. And then I ended up working for right at the height of the poker boom. There was a big thing in South Wales where they had just all over, where you'd have like leagues in pubs and bars.
Yeah.
So you'd go along and you'd play your entry, and the prize at the end of it, if you managed to win everything, was some poker cruise or something. And I ended up running those nights, and I would be paid virtually nothing. And then afterwards, the guys who had played in it would want to play little like £5 sit and goes. And I started making more money out of the £5 sit and goes than I was out of the running the tournament.
Yeah.
So that was quite good fun. I started thinking, I'm all right at this. And then you don't realize how bad you are until you take a step up, right? That's the thing with poker, is that you can crush it in your home game or your local casino and you go somewhere else. And then I've been going along and playing when I can, and kind of moved away, like online and stuff. I've kind of moved away from playing Hold'em nowadays and just tend to play a lot more pot limit Omaha. But yeah, that's kind of, we're probably talking, what, about 2007, 2008 when I started getting mad into it. So we're kind of 15 years into this. And I reckon I go through periods where I think about it loads and I think I get better. And then you just get lazy and you stop thinking about it and you make the same mistakes over and over again. I still haven't quite taught myself ICM. That's my big problem in the last stages of tournaments. They're going, well, good hand, so I'll call, and then I get crippled because the blinds are massive and the rest of it. But yeah, it's and there's a good group of guys that I know around here that that we have the occasional home game with. And during the pandemic, we had quite a lot of fun that we were playing online, but with Zoom up, so we would still talk to each other and made you feel a bit like you had some connection with other humans while we were all shut inside.
Yeah. So which platforms are you currently playing on, or have you played on?
Yeah, I play Full Tilt Stroke Poker Stars, playing a bit of 888 poker, which I think is also party poker, because you'll have lots of these that have come together. But back in the day, it was party poker and Full Tilt was what I was playing on right back at the beginning, and then of course Full Tilt disappeared for a while, but now it's back with Stars. But but if I'm honest, I think I feel more comfortable playing in person than I do online. I mean, I play quite a lot online, but I think I'm a better live player than I am a online player.
Right. That's interesting. So I wanted to ask you, what is what you would say the biggest moment you ever had in poker? Biggest could be best or worst, but probably best, because
I think the first time I ever won, like won, not cash, but won a live tournament, and it wouldn't have been for a lot of money. You know, it would have been a 25 or 30 pound tournament. But actually being there at the end and winning heads up and kind of being like, oh, I'm walking away as the winner. That kind of felt a bit special. And then after I'd done it once, I found I went on a bit of a run of getting lots of final tables. And that's kind of always how I found it with poker, actually. I seem to have a run of doing really, really well, and I start feeling really good and confident about myself. And then poker comes along and kicks me as hard as it can in the balls. and I'm there going, oh, maybe I'm just terrible at this. I think that for me, because you're busy and you don't play all the time, I think it's kind of getting it out of your head as a recreational player. Variance is not an easy thing, I don't think, as a recreational player. Because if you're playing every day as a professional, you realize sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you don't. Whereas if your big night out of the week is going and playing in a home game with your friends, and then you get two outed, late on in the tournament and end up going out in the bubble, you're like, I think that's a harder thing psychologically to get your head around.
Yeah,
than it is if you're playing literally every day.
Yeah.
Because you just go, well, like I think if you're someone who's lucky enough and brave enough to try and make a living out of it, I think you deal a little bit better with I suppose the advantage I have when I'm playing in those games is that if I lose, the only difference it makes is my drive home's a bit sadder than it would be otherwise. I'm still going to be able to pay my rent. I'm still going to be able to feed my children. The money that I would have won would not have been in any way life-changing. It's just a bit annoying. So I suppose that's kind of the advantage as well. But yeah, I think that's winning a tournament, I don't know, with 25 runners or something, you just think to yourself, oh wow, that was quite good.
That's a big deal.
And I've long ago come to the conclusion, when you're playing in a tournament, there's more than one. I reckon if you play a 9-seat sit and go, I think you can win quite a lot of those without getting lucky. Whereas if you're playing 4 tables, 5 tables, I think you're going to have to get lucky 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. To actually make it to the end.
To actually make it, to make it to the end of the tournament. Just because there's going to be a time when you're behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just need to make sure you're not out.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? It's always nice to. I've also I'm not a very superstitious poker player at all, but I am a firm believer in the too many outs theory. Yeah. If you're behind, but you have too many outs, then you're not going to win. If you're there going any club, any 8, any 7.
Yeah.
I've got like 23 outs here. I'm not hitting one of those outs. It's not going to happen. If I've got 10, I'm feeling, I might hit one. But yeah, if I've got too many outs, I start panicking. Yeah. And then there'll be times where you can, I remember there's one hand years ago, and it still sticks in my head. Basically, I could only win with a queen that wasn't a spade.
Okay.
And I think we worked out there was only one of those left, and I hit it, and it's just kind of like, and then but you forget those, don't you? That's the thing, is you forget when you get really lucky, and then moan about when you've had bad luck. You
only remember the bad bits.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and I think that if you're going to be a recreational poker player, you basically just need to walk around with a bag of grievances that you're really upset about most of the time whenever you see your friends. That's the point of it, right?
That's actually the point of it. So yeah, that's a good segue. What would you say was your baddest beat? Like the hand that still haunts you till this day?
I tell you what, I was playing in a home game with a friend, and we were heads up, and it was one of those ones we played at that time. We played a lot of games where it was like second place gets nothing. Yeah. It's winner takes it all. And I'm heads up with him, and I had like ace 3, and I flopped 2 pair, and he got runner for 4 cards to a straight to beat me with a straight to the 6. And I remember just thinking, I never want to play this game ever again.
Yeah.
Because he was just properly rubbing it in my face as well. He's like, and I'm like, you are the luckiest little creature I've ever come across in my life. And it was like, we played once a month, and there was like a little trophy that you got to keep for the month and all the rest of it, and it was like proper bragging rights. And again, we're not talking much money. Like, we're talking £110 for first place or something, right?
Yeah.
But I still to this day just think about how it was that he managed to get runner straight with 4 straight cards on the board to beat me with a straight to the 6. When I flop 2 pair and he's got literally nothing. Yeah, that upset me. But hey ho.
Would you say you have any like poker idols, like poker players you try to mimic or study their game, or actually just enjoy watching more than the
Yeah, I
others?
think there's quite a few that I just enjoy watching. I think like I've long ago come to the conclusion that while I have a basic understanding of the maths, I'm never going to get to the point that I can do it as quickly as these guys do, right? And I think that's the thing, is what you don't necessarily realize as a recreational player until you start listening to these guys talk is how much of it is basically just based on the numbers, right? I'm calling here because in this spot, I think I'm going to win more than I lose, which again is that variance thing that I don't think us recreational players necessarily get, right? I don't think that's something that we ever get the opportunity to have because we don't play often enough. But I think in terms of watching poker on TV, the first time I started watching poker on TV, it was high stakes poker, which I think is true for so many poker fans. Those big chunks of cash and those like crazy players that you had there. And then season 5 of that came along and you had Tom Dwan, who was, I don't know, younger than me, probably 4 or 5 years younger than me, but a kid, and just, I still remember the moment when such a famous hand, he's all in with Barry Greenstein, and Greenstein's got aces, and I think he's got king queen of spades.
Yeah.
And he's got a pair and a flush draw, and Greenstein says to him, do you want to take some money back out of the pot? After Greenstein had said no to running it twice. And the way Dwan just went, no, just let it slide. We'll just see what happens. And then he wins $920,000 in one hand. And I remember just thinking, I can't imagine having balls that big. It's just unbelievable to just not be like, well, if I take up back 200 grand, I'm still going to win. I'm still going to win $400,000 or $500,000 It's a crazy amount of money I'm going to win. But he's just to not care at all. I've always liked him, and I think I think listening to Daniel Negreanu talk about poker is always really interesting. I think I don't know if you ever watched his masterclass stuff that he did. I think if you watched that, I think it was one of those ones that you had to pay for. But if you watch any of that, then I think it's that you can really tighten up your game with that, because it's when he starts talking about. I think that the thing that makes the biggest difference, the 2 biggest things that made a difference to my admittedly not brilliant poker game, just something I love, is understanding position and just basically almost eliminating limping out of my game altogether. And that's something I think when you play against pokers, or especially when you get invited to a game and people are quite new and you're there going, well, I'm literally never limping. You're not seeing a flop if I'm in it without at least a 2x or a 3x raise because I'm folding or I'm raising. Yeah. It takes them a while to get used to the fact that someone's being quote unquote aggressive.
Yeah.
But then you go and do exactly that in my local casino where it's a 40 or 50 pound limited rebuy or freeze out, and you'll raise 3x and the guy 4 seats along from you will put in 12 or 13x, and you're there going, well, I guess I fold, but I think the understanding of what an aggressive poker player is changes depending on the situation that you're in. Because when you first start playing poker, you just want to see flops, don't you? Everyone wants to see flops.
You want to play.
You want to play. Yeah. And I think and the other thing that I think's changed for me over the years as far as poker is concerned is that I've just got more and more interested in different types of poker. Like I quite like playing a mixed game. And I love Omaha. I just think Omaha's just the best type of poker because you make hands in Omaha, right? That's the thing, is that the times in Hold'em where you win with, I've got a king, and someone else, you don't even have a pair and you win. Whereas in Omaha, 6-card Omaha will break your brain because if a board pairs, someone has a full house. And if there's 3 clubs on the board, someone has a flush. It's just, and I think that actually makes it interesting for bluffing spots, because if you decide if the third card of one suit comes, it's a great spot to bluff at. And if you get caught, you kind of know where you are. yeah, it's quite an interesting game. There's one tournament that my local casino was running for ages, which was Omaha 456. So the dealer got to choose the number of cards that we all got dealt, and that was quite a lot of fun. That was, it tends to be, there's fewer grumpy, angry 19-year-olds who think they're the next Tom Dwan when you play an Omaha tournament than when you go and play Hold'em.
I see your point. And let's talk about a little bit about crypto and the NFT space. How familiar are you with the NFT or Web3 as a whole? What drove you into it? What made it interesting for you?
I'm working on it. It's like anything, right? I'm kind of at that stage, in the learning circle where I realize how little I know, which is always quite a comforting place to be in, right? When you first start, you're like, oh, I understand it. And then you go, oh, actually, no, I don't. But I'm willing to learn, right? I probably know more than other people who think they 100% understand it. So no, I've been quite lucky. There's a project that we work with the company I work for, CPL, the Caribbean Premier League, where we've been doing some NFT stuff, and I've been a little bit involved in that. There's a friend of mine who I play poker with, who's talked to me a lot about it. He works in finance, so he's been talking to me about wallets and how you cash out and where you want your money to be, and the difference between Ethereum and Bitcoin, and all those other bits and pieces. So I found that quite interesting, and I think I went on a call about a sports thing with NFTs, and I think I think it's going to take a while for people to get their head around the idea of. So my office, as you may very well be able to see, is just full of all sorts of collectible nonsense that I've picked up over the years from cricket tournaments. There's cricket balls and cricket helmets and hats and all sorts of stuff. But I think it's, for an old man like me, moving to thinking that you can have a collectible, but it's not necessarily something that's has a physical presence. I think it's quite an interesting thing to have, but it's, it makes sense in terms of the way the world is changing and the way that the internet's going, and I think, as anything, it's always interesting, and I don't think necessarily most people understand. I think the F is the really important bit, right? That's what people don't necessarily understand, and I'm not sure whoever it was that named them necessarily came up with the best name for them when they decided to use a word like fungible, because it's not something people necessarily understand, But when you explain to someone, you say, well, a £20 note is fungible, but a piece of art isn't. That's kind of the conversation you're having. So I'm interested. I've got a couple of wallets. They've got a little bit of money in them. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. We'll see where we end up.
And we'll see what happens. So PHN is pretty much taking the entire poker world into the metaverse. That's what we aim to do. That's what we want to achieve. You are obviously a very good mix between the love for the sport, whether it's cricket or poker, and your communication skills, which are top-notch. This is why we think you are a very good fit to be what we would say as a PHN ambassador almost, to communicate our message to poker fans and to sports fans as a whole. How do you resonate with the messaging PHN is bringing to actually Web3, to Web2 actually, not bringing the Web3 message into Web2?
I mean, there was a lot of compliments there that I don't feel. I'm too British to fully appreciate anyone complimenting me. So thank you for that. I like to think what I bring almost everything I do is just an enthusiasm. I don't really tend to get involved in things unless I really love them, and I genuinely really love poker. It's something I think about and talk about all the time. If I'm sat watching terrible television, there's every chance I'll pull my phone out of my pocket and I'll end up playing poker on my phone, which is a terrible thing to do. You should always try and concentrate on playing poker rather than doing it distractedly. That's how I basically lose all my money. I like to think that's what I'm able to do. I think it's important to be able to laugh at yourself and realize that something I've never really understood with poker players, when you're kind of there going and they're like, they're having these conversations with you like they're making a £1 million decision and you're there going, you tanking for 4 minutes while you make this decision as to whether or not you call pre-flop is is ruining my Friday night. Can you stop it? So that, I'd like to think that's what I'd be able to bring. I'd be able to, like, I'm far from, I'm not in a, you know, it's always interesting talking to people who are really, really good at poker. I've got some friends who are like proper good. And I find talking to them about the game genuinely fascinating. But I think, I always think, and I think this about cricket, I think this about poker, is that what you want to do is you want to try and be welcoming and bring people into a sport and bring people into something that you're doing. And I think a lot of the time, cricket's very guilty of this, and I think poker is as well, is that someone wants to come along and play, and then people don't necessarily make them feel welcome, and, you know, will be cross at them because they don't know when to post a blind or an ante, or, you know, they make a call that you probably wouldn't have made and then get lucky. And cricket's very guilty of this. You know, cricket's like, oh, you wouldn't understand it, it's too complicated. And I'm always like, it's a man hitting a ball with a stick. It's the most simple sport in the world. I can explain it to you in 2 minutes. Yeah. So, you know, I think you know, being that might help as well. But yeah, again, I'm still feeling uncomfortable because of the compliments. They've you know, you need to have a better understanding of us Brits. We don't cope well with that.
We'll learn from an interview to an interview. So for us in PHN, this is what we actually aim to bridge, because Web3 projects or businesses, PHN is a business from top to bottom, they actually revolves around community. So the things that you talked about the community not being as welcoming because it is expected of you to already know the rules or what to do or whatever. Yeah. This is what PHN actually brings to the table. Not only a place for you to play poker in the metaverse, which has its own benefits as a whole, but actually provide a community that supports you whatever level you are. If you are top level player and you want to be a part of PHN, we will reward you for being a teacher and a guider for other players. If you are in the midway through, but you actually know how to communicate and you want to talk about the game and you want to make YouTube videos about it or podcast or whatever, we would allow you to do so and compensate you for your work. If you are a new player and you want to learn the game and you want to improve, this is your place to be and improve and learn and be part of this community. This is what the whole Web3, let's say, community as a whole is what it's all about. It's about being a community, being together and help each other grow as one. And this is what we aim to do at PHN, and this is why we think you are a great fit for us, because you are very welcoming and you are very nice and easy to talk to and to listen to, and you really love the game, which is the most important thing for us. So I wanted to, even though you are not really into Web3 as a whole yet, yeah, where do you think you would see the poker and the NFT space together in, let's say, 10 years?
Well, I suppose the interesting thing is how quickly, I mean, it's quick and it's not quick in 21st century terms, right? I mean, the interesting thing is obviously people have been talking about Bitcoin for 10 years, right? But it's really only in the last, like, I always think when you're really into something, it's people might know that you're really into it, but they're not necessarily going to talk to you about it, right? And I know this with cricket, right? So people know I'm obsessed with cricket.
Yeah.
But then every now and then, my neighbor who lives next door, who's lovely, has no interest, will see a story and it will resonate enough for her to ask me about it, right? And I think that's kind of where crypto's got as a whole, as I think, you know, there's a lot of people now that are just really interested in the space, you know, and where it's going in terms of regulation and all the rest of it's quite interesting to see how that fits with it. So, you know, I think it's kind of, as far as crypto is concerned, I think it's kind of at the point where it's going to expand out and become more and more a way of the people do business. You know, it's so much easier to send money overseas doing it this way than it is to, you know, go through a bank and pay all the fees. You know, it's much easier to pay a small gas fee to Ethereum than it is to pay however much you need to pay in terms of a transfer, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's really interesting. You know, I genuinely think there's going to come a point where we are paying for everyday things with these type of currencies. I don't think it's a million miles away. I mean, it already is very easy to do so, isn't it? And lots of platforms. And there's, the NFT space, like I said, that's something I've been watching with interest. I think there's quite a lot of cynicism about it out there still, I think.
Yeah, obviously.
But I think, when I've spoken to guys that seem to be doing it for the right reason, and, and it's not some sort of, it's a way that people can enjoy something that they like and then potentially become an investment, but maybe not an investment, maybe not, when you're collecting things, sometimes they go up and sometimes they go down, right? That's the joy of
That's the nature. Yeah,
that's the nature of it. I'm sure there's lots of things in this room of nonsense that I've picked up that will be worth more one day than it would be the next. But it's nice to own things. It's a very human thing, isn't it? We like owning things.
We like owning and we like collecting.
Yeah, it makes us feel like we have some sort of connection to this.
Yeah, this is how we communicate.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm always one of these people that I'm more than happy to say, more than me, tell me. And that's kind of where I'm at, really, is that I'm an enthusiastic student rather than a knowledgeable teacher.
Great. And how do you see the poker world as a whole for like the next couple of years?
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? That I think it's quite well placed, wasn't it? When we obviously, it's really difficult to reference anything without talking about the last 2 and a bit years that we've all gone through.
Yeah,
right?
of course.
Because this is the big thing that those of us who are alive now are going to remember and experience. And I think poker probably dealt quite well with it, didn't it? In terms of, still being able to produce content, still allowing people to play, because it has that ability for people to do that, right? And I think that's quite interesting. I think it's easier, it gets easier and easier for you to communicate with people around the world, and I think that'll be interesting. I think the world's just going more and more virtual, right? In the job I do 3 years ago, I would have probably made 2 or 3 more international trips a year than I do now.
Yeah.
Just because I don't need to, I can do it all online. But it's kind of what I want to see. What I want to see from poker is I want to find a way that we can have a combination of that live experience where you get the fun of talking to people and, people getting under your skin and you getting under theirs, and all the other things that, winding people up and laughing and being able to, kind of, remember someone's face and all that kind of stuff. I'd like to see how poker can turn, put those two things together. And I think kind of metaverse poker is quite an interesting way of bridging that gap, really.
Yeah, that's what I hope.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's that for me is where, it's how you can carry on down the virtual pathway, but make it more personable and a human experience. Because there's nothing I love more than sitting around a poker table with people that I like and just talking nonsense and having a laugh and laughing at the laughing at the way they play. A friend of mine, I just tell him how nitty he is all the time. I'm like, I can't believe you folded there. You're such a nit. And, and he'll probably cash more than me, but I like winding him up. It's like, where's your gamble? All that kind of stuff that you can have with friends. That's what we need to try and bring together.
Yeah, sounds great. Okay, it was lovely talking to you. And
thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Obviously, of course, it's been a pleasure and it's been an honor. We will see you in the next interview, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.